competition of SUVs today has become absolutely ridiculous. You have SUVs of all shapes, all sizes, mini SUV, micro SUV, compact SUV, mid-size SUV, full-size SUV, luxury SUV. SUVs are all over the place. But there was a time when an SUV was an absolute novelty. Let me take you back to the start of the 90s, to the start of Tata Motors' passenger car making journey. This behind me is the OG Sierra. Now, of course, at the Auto Expo, the new Sierra, the electric Sierra, has been unveiled. And what do you think of this move towards a full electric Sierra? Let us know in the comments below. But on this, the very first episode of Gone But Not Forgotten for 2023, we're going to be rewinding back 3 decades. The first SUV in India, the first vehicle in India with standard air conditioning, with power steering, with power windows. This was a path-breaking vehicle. And of course, even today, after all these years, doesn't this look really, really handsome? Tata Motors began their journey with trucks, and those trucks were done in collaboration with Mercedes-Benz. Now, there was no Mercedes-Benz collaboration for their cars. This was all done locally. But in terms of the design, especially the nose, this had a lot of Mercedes-Benz inspiration to it. But of course, the highlight of the Sierra has to be the profile. Now, this was inspired by the second generation Ford Bronco. We never saw it in India. We have no relation to it. But this was inspired by that, and the standout feature, the highlight, was this glass area. Now, this was a 3-door. It was not a proper 5-door. It made it a bit impractical, and we will talk about that in a bit, but it gave it a striking silhouette. This looked like a proper SUV. This was a proper SUV based on the X2 platform, ladder frame, rear wheel drive. Later on, the export versions also had 4-wheel drive. It had a spare wheel stuck on at the back. This, after all these years, still looks cool. This still has a lot of elements that can be used as inspiration for the Sierra of the future. Excuse the condition of the engine bay. This car has had a long life, and it is still chugging along. The Sierra, when it was first launched, got a 1.9-liter diesel engine. This was one of the first diesel passenger vehicles in the country after the Ambassador diesel. It made 67 bhp. The diesel engine, it was based on a Peugeot design, and 67 bhp wasn't really sufficient to pull this approximately 1.5-ton vehicle. So in 97, it got the turbocharged engine. That's the engine in this vehicle. So the Sierra Turbo, it actually got the engine from the Safari. That was the engine made for the Safari. Then it went into the Sierra, and later on, this engine was also used in the export versions with all-wheel drive. The turbocharged engine, it made 89 bhp, and of course, in those days, you had a mountain of turbo lag, but at least it gave it enough power to get moving along quite smartly. And of course, it's not a very precise gearbox. Yeah, that's first. Tata Motors always struggled to make nice gearboxes. Even the Indica, if you remember, didn't have a great gearbox. It only improved in the more recent cars. So here it is driving by feel, pretty imprecise. But once you get the hang of it, you know where to slot the gears, and it's okay. It goes. Now, this engine is the turbocharged engine. This particular model is the 98 Sierra Turbo. It made 89 bhp, far more torque than the earlier one, around 189 Newton meters of torque. But all the torque came in once you only revved the engine. So you had to rev it above 2,500 RPM. Otherwise, like now, it would just bog down and not really move. And now once it's above 2,500 RPM, in fact, above 3,000 RPM, that's when the turbo starts spinning and the Sierra starts to move. So you really had to work the gearbox to make sure that the engine was spinning in the meat of its torque curve. And of course, diesel engine, old school diesel engine, a proper noisy engine this. Revs to around 4,500–5,000 RPM. And in terms of handling, plenty of body roll. This is a ladder frame chassis, rear wheel drive. So old school kind of layout, not the modern monocoques. And that meant you had to be a little careful when you drove the car. But on the highways, even today, this is very nice. The suspension has got good compliance. The stability at speed is actually pretty good. It even had proper sophisticated suspension, independent suspension, not torsion beam and all that. Anything you had to struggle to find first gear. Again, that's one of those traditional strengths of Tata Motors. Their ability to take on all kinds of roads, feel indestructible. That very first taste of that DNA was in this, the original Sierra. In terms of the interiors, nothing really to write home about. Very basic, but in those days, everything else was also pretty basic. So this was pretty cool. In fact, it got a tachometer, and the tachometer was a massive novelty, as was factory fitted air conditioning. Power windows. The Sierra, it got power windows. I think this was the first car in India with power windows. The Sierra also got power steering. That made it ahead of its times compared to anything else. The seating position also, a proper typical SUV seating position. You sit high up, great view of the road ahead, great visibility, gives you the king of the world feel. And also the glass area is actually quite low. It starts low, so it feels very airy and very spacious. And since it was the most premium and luxurious Indian car, our Prime Minister swapped out the ambassador for the Sierra, seen here at the Republic Day parade in the late 90s. You will notice that the rear end is completely redone. That's so that the guards can jump out of the back. And because it is still a 3-door, the Prime Minister is actually sitting in the front seat, unlike the back seat that I now find myself in. A Tata Motors official was once quoted as saying that the Sierra was made for people to drive out of the city, and that's why they had this huge glass area so that passengers, they could get uninterrupted viewing of the surroundings. This big glass also meant that you got uninterrupted baking in the Indian sunshine. And because the diesel engine was not powerful enough to run the air conditioning at like proper full cold chill blast, guys sitting at the back, especially in the summer, got properly baked. And these glasses, they couldn't go down. So you couldn't really roll down the glasses. So if your air conditioning went for a toss, you had an iconic oven to transport you around. That was one problem. The second problem was getting in at the back. The only way to do that was to move the front seats forward, and the doors weren't like larger doors, they were normal sized doors, so you really had to indulge in some acrobatics to get in here. Though once you got in here, for 4 people, this was actually pretty spacious. There is enough space out here, enough headroom, and of course this glass means it doesn't feel claustrophobic. And of course, those days we weren't obsessed about the sunroof. Maybe we've grown bigger, but there's no way that I'm going to fit out of there. So it's easier to climb out through here. Oh, shit. And that's why, to ease the problem of getting in and out of the Sierra, Tata Motors, well, Tata Engineering, actually Telco in those days, they made the Estate. Now, both the Estate and the Sierra were based off the same X1 platform, which was in fact derived off the Telco line pickup. It had multiple options for the wheelbase. The wheelbase of the Estate, it was 425 mm more than the Sierra. And as you can see, it is much longer. There's more space for proper rear doors. There's a much bigger boot, and also it has more conventional styling. In fact, the styling, it was heavily based on the W123 series E-Class Estate. You see pictures of the Estate and that 123 Estate side by side, and you can immediately see the inspiration. Whatever said and done, this was a really good-looking, handsome car. But even in those days, Indians, we didn't really take too much to the Estate body shape. This particular car is going in for a full restoration, but I wanted to show this to you because this has a lot of the original parts, like this Tata Engineering logo on the bonnet, the T on the nose. This is all original. These amber side indicators. That was how it was back in the day. The same wheel caps. It even has the Telco T on it. Of course, a lot of the other parts like the side indicators are missing, but these rubbing strips were also there originally with the car. Over at the rear, you had to use your key to open the fuel filler flap. And the Estate, it had a single wiper. The Sierra had twin wipers. The Estate only needed a single wiper. The original Estate badges, I'm not sure if this Tata badge is original. I think it is original. Everything on this is original. And after a nice coat of paint, a sprucing up of the interiors, even the interiors are original, so I'll show that to you. This will be a gorgeous car. In fact, Sierras and Estates, they are only going up in value. The appreciation of these old Tata cars, they are going up and the value is going up. So this looks like a keeper. And solid metal, everything is solid metal. The Estate, 1,640 kilos, a proper ladder frame. So in terms of the just sheer weight of this thing, it's unbelievable. And to think that only 68 bhp is pulling this thing. Let's go for a drive. So the Tata Estate, the original 1.9 litre diesel engine and the old gearbox. So to get reverse, you have to lift this collar. Hopefully I'm in reverse. Yep, and I'm in reverse. And the first is even more interesting. So this is the dog leg first. That's first, not second. And a big fat steering wheel. Lot of commercial vehicle parts in here. That's the Tata Estate. This is a massive thing. 4.6 meters long. So it's huge and it's heavy, 1.6 tons. Yet it has this old engine, 68 bhp, 115 Newton meters of torque, 68 bhp and 1.6 tons. Obviously, it's not going to go very fast. Contemporary road test said that the Estate, it did 0 to 100 in, wait for it, 44 seconds. 44 seconds for 0 to 100. Top speed of around 120 kilometers per hour. It would have taken minutes to get up to top speed. So it was not an effortless car. And when the Estate came, Maruti was already there in the country. And the little dinky 800, it moved so easily, moved so quickly without any effort. This one needed a bit of manhandling, especially to find gears. It's such an imprecise, all over the place gearbox. Now, like the Sierra, the Estate also came standard with power steering, power windows, and 4 power windows. The Sierra only had the front 2 power windows. The rear windows would not go down. It had air conditioning. I'm not sure if this cassette player is standard or aftermarket, but cassette player. Side A, side B. This actually is original. These interiors are original. The Sierra that we've been driving, everything has been done up. This is the original steering wheel, original dials. The tacho is not working. The speedo is working. Speedo is marked till 160 kilometers per hour, which is very optimistic in a Sierra because it can do barely 120 kilometers per hour. But the seats still feel nice and comfortable. There is a lot of space inside this. And if you want to chug along at 60 kilometers per hour, sure, it can do it, no problems. The brakes, it got disc brakes in the front, drum brakes at the rear, which was advanced for its time. Ladder frame chassis, rear wheel drive. There was no option of 4-wheel drive on the Estate. Obviously, no point. This was not an SUV. The Sierra was the SUV and that got 4-wheel drive. The Estate, to the best of my knowledge, was never exported either. It was only for the domestic market.
The Sierra was Tata's first passenger vehicle to be exported. It was called the Telco Sport in some markets, Tata Sport in others, and Gurkha in some. Notice how the Tata T on the nose has been redesigned. That was done to avoid copyright issues with Talbot. In Italy, there was also a luxury variant done by Italian designer Oricari that featured two-tone bodywork roof bars and interior upgrades. And it was demand from export markets that led to both the turbocharged engine and the extremely rare 4x4 version. Come on. I'm not sure, does this have 5 gears? Oh yeah, it has 5 gears. 5-speed gearbox. Though after driving this for a while, this feels like a little bit lumbering beast, a lumbering giant that takes a lot of effort to get going anywhere. But in its day, this looked really cool. If you saw an estate, that was a rare sighting, and it was like, oh wow, an estate on the road. These were rare, cool cars. It's strange that the estate was so unloved, so overlooked, more practical than the Sierra, more space, more comfortable. Surprising that even then, 30 years ago, Indians never liked estates. I don't know why. Why was that? So strange. Let's get into reverse. Yep, yeah, in reverse. The estate, it ran from 1992 to 2000, but it never got the turbocharged engine. That engine went into the Sierra. It first went into the Safari, then it went into the Sierra. The estate, even though it was more practical, it was not as loved as the Sierra, and that's why it didn't get the upgrades. It died in 2000, but the Sierra continued with the turbocharged engine, and that's what we're going to jump into. Even today, a 98 model car, so 25 years later, doesn't feel slow. Of course, you have to work a little bit hard to get some power out of this engine. You have to really rev it properly. But not bad at all. Brakes, disc brakes. Again, that was a novelty in those days. So Tata Motors didn't skimp out on anything. They gave it everything that they could throw at the Sierra. This was a luxury car of its time, and it had all the trappings. It even had 2 rear wipers. Can you believe it? 2 rear wipers. When I was growing up, the Sierra, it was a hugely desirable vehicle. You would look at a Sierra and you would go, wow, it was like immense. If you had a Sierra, you were really cool. And also, you were doing really well for yourself in life. Talking about the Sierra, it's impossible not to talk about those iconic ads. Takes the rough with the smooth. This was the very first ad for the Sierra, and you can imagine the kind of impact it made on all of us, especially me, an impressionable 13-year-old. A brilliant ad that beautifully conveys the premise of the Sierra being an on plus off-road SUV. It has off-road shots that we replicate even today. Brilliant copywriting takes the rough with the smooth. That deep macho voice at the end.
Tata Sierra, it takes the rough with the smooth.
It made petrol heads out of all of us. Then came the ads for the Sierra Turbo. It's not owned, it is possessed. Iconic ads, all of them. Quality was always a bugbear of the Sierra and the Estate, even the first Safari, the first Indicas. Tata Motors struggled with that. Their DNA of being a truck maker, it was hard to turn things around. Finally, things have changed, but these cars had a lot of problems. Today, the fanboys won't admit it, but I had friends, my father had a lot of friends who had Sierras and Estates, and all of them had like proper problems. Today, you tend to gloss over that because that's all in the past, but yeah. I don't believe it, a 30-year-old vehicle still feels cool today. Man, I'm tired of saying this, but this really was ahead of its time. had the OG Sierra back in the day come with proper 5 doors, it would have done much better for itself. This was a bit too radical. Back then, in the early 90s, this was the most expensive car you could buy. The Estate was to come later on. At that price, having the impracticality of 3 doors, even today, 3 doors, the Thar, okay, it is a niche vehicle and that's why it sells. But otherwise, a 3-door vehicle, even today, it doesn't sell. Those days when the Sierra was the only car you could probably afford, to have it just as a 3-door was maybe pushing things a bit too far. But everything that Tata Motors learnt with the Sierra, that went into the Safari, into the Indica, into all their future vehicles. The Sierra, it established Tata Motors' reputation. It laid the foundation for everything that was to follow. And now, today, to have the Sierra back in its all-electric avatar, that's a great story for Indian automotive engineering. What do you think of this Sierra story? Let us know in the comments below. What do you think of this episode of Gone But Not Forgotten? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, if you have any ideas, if you want us to feature certain cars and bikes on the Gone But Not Forgotten episode series, let us know in the comments and we'd love to feature those. Thank you guys for watching.